Get the hell off this beach right now. Your pathetic pile of rotten wood is making my VIP yacht marina look like a garbage dump. The arrogant contractor's voice cut through the freezing ocean wind like a knife. He didn't just yell from a distance. He stepped forward and viciously kicked Clara's heavy plastic bucket with his steel-toed boot. Pieces of carefully polished, ancient driftwood scattered wildly across the wet gray sand. A frail little girl, trembling in an oversized coat, suddenly ran forward from the crowd. She threw her tiny arms around Clara's leg, her eyes wide with terror as she begged the large man to please stop. The contractor looked down at the child with pure disgust. With a careless, violent shove, he pushed the little girl away. She lost her footing on the slippery stones and tumbled backward. She crashed hard into the freezing, relentless winter waves. Up on the concrete seawall, a ruggedly dressed man in a faded jacket stood completely still. He was watching every single second of this unfold. He didn't scream, he didn't rush down immediately, but his hands slowly balled into fists so tight. His knuckles turned white. His eyes were locked on the contractor, blazing with a terrifying, calculated fury that could burn down the entire coastline. Hello, everyone. Storms of life may wash away fragile shores, but God always builds lighthouses of justice to protect the kind-hearted. If you believe in blessings and divine protection, leave a prayer in the comments below. Type, "I vow to keep my integrity so God will lift me through every storm of life." And please hit subscribe today, so God can guide you to more heartwarming stories of faith and redemption. Now, let me take you back and tell you how this heartbreaking moment at the edge of the ocean actually began. You see, Clara was not someone who fought back against the cruelty of the world. She was a quiet orphan who had known hardship since the day she was born. If you watched her walk along the shoreline, you would immediately notice a slight, painful limp in her right leg. That limp was a permanent souvenir from a terrifying night 3 years ago. She had thrown herself into a violent riptide to save a drowning stranger from a capsized fishing boat. The accident shattered her leg, but it never managed to break her spirit. Clara spent her days walking miles up and down the freezing coastline. She was a woodworker, but not the kind who bought expensive, polished timber from a store. She hunted for ocean-battered driftwood, carrying heavy bags on her bad leg through the harsh coastal winds. She took those discarded, broken pieces of wood back to her tiny, drafty garage. With calloused hands and endless patience, she carved them into beautiful, intricate toys. She didn't sell them for profit to the wealthy tourists. She gave them away to the children at the local orphanage. She wanted to make sure those forgotten kids had something beautiful to unwrap on Christmas morning. The small amount of money she made from odd jobs went entirely to buying medicine for her bedridden grandmother. Clara was completely invisible to the wealthy tourists who visited the bay in their luxury cars. But to the struggling locals, she was an absolute angel, walking on a broken wing. On the other side of this story is a man named Arthur. If you looked at Arthur standing on the seawall, in his thrift store boots and worn-out flannel shirt, you would definitely feel sorry for him. You would think he was just another struggling single father down on his luck, trying to survive the winter. But looks can be incredibly deceiving. Arthur was a certified genius, and the billionaire founder of the largest clean wind energy and maritime conglomerate in the country. He had more money than he could ever possibly spend in 100 lifetimes. But all the extreme wealth in the world couldn't fix the one thing that was completely broken in his life: his 6-year-old daughter, Lily. Lily had suffered a severe emotional trauma after unexpectedly losing her mother in a car accident. She had stopped speaking entirely after that horrific day. She was diagnosed with severe, unresponsive depression. Arthur had hired the absolute best pediatric psychiatrists in the world. He had flown her on his private jet to exclusive clinics in Switzerland. Nothing worked. The little girl was trapped inside a dark, silent shell, fading away a little more every single day. Desperate and exhausted by the fake, hollow world of the elite, Arthur made a radical decision to disappear. He walked out of his corporate boardroom, put on his oldest clothes, and took Lily to this quiet, working-class coastal town. He just wanted her to hear the ocean, far away from the flashing cameras and the clinical doctors. And that is exactly where the magic of the universe decided to intervene. A few days before the terrible incident on the beach, Clara was sitting on a cold rock, resting her aching leg. She was quietly carving a piece of pale driftwood with a small pocket knife. Arthur and Lily happened to be walking nearby along the water's edge. Lily, who normally stared blankly at the ground without noticing anything, suddenly stopped in her tracks. She pulled her tiny hand from her father's grasp and walked slowly toward Clara. Arthur panicked for a second, his heart racing, ready to pull his daughter back to safety. But then he saw Clara look up. Clara didn't treat Lily like a fragile, broken patient who needed to be fixed. She just smiled a warm, gentle smile and held out her rough, scarred hands. She had been carving a tiny, beautiful seagull, with its wings spread wide to catch the wind. Clara gently placed the wooden bird into Lily's small palms. She whispered that the bird was incredibly brave, just like her. For the first time in 8 agonizing months, the corners of Lily's mouth actually turned up. She smiled. She hugged the wooden bird tightly to her chest and let out a soft, beautiful giggle that echoed over the waves. Standing a few yards away, Arthur, the ruthless titan of industry, completely broke down. He cried silent tears behind his sunglasses, overwhelmed by a wave of pure relief. In that fleeting, magical moment, a poor girl with a limp had given him back his entire world. But the fragile peace of this small coastal town was about to be violently destroyed. A massive corporate resort project had just targeted the bay for a luxury development. The lead contractor in charge of the site was a ruthless, arrogant man who treated the local residents like absolute dirt. He was told by his corporate bosses to clear the beach and make it look pristine at all costs. Rumor had it that the ultimate VIP, the mysterious billionaire who was secretly funding the acquisition, was coming to inspect the area today. The contractor desperately wanted to prove his power and efficiency. He brought heavy, deafening excavators down to the peaceful shoreline. He started forcefully evicting the local fishermen, the scavengers, and anyone he deemed too poor to be standing on his sand. That brings us right back to this freezing, chaotic morning. Clara was near the water, desperately trying to gather her largest pile of ancient driftwood. She desperately needed this specific wood to finish the rocking horses for the orphanage before the holidays. The contractor marched down from the boardwalk, flanked by 2 massive, intimidating security guards. He took one look at Clara's worn-out clothes and her noticeable limp, and his face twisted into an ugly, cruel sneer. He aggressively ordered her to abandon her trash and get out of his sight immediately. Clara politely and calmly explained that this wood was all she had for the children. She begged him for just 10 more minutes to safely move her heavy things up the beach. Instead of showing even a single shred of human decency, the contractor just laughed in her face. He looked at her bad leg and loudly mocked her disability. Right in front of the gathering crowd of onlookers, he told her that pathetic trash belongs with the rest of the garbage. He signaled his excavator driver to come over and crush the entire pile of wood into useless splinters. The massive yellow machine roared to life, its steel bucket lifting into the air. Clara didn't back down. She threw her arms wide, standing directly between the deadly machine and her wooden pieces. But she wasn't the only one who moved. Little Lily, who had been watching from the edge of the crowd, suddenly broke into a run. She remembered the gentle woman who gave her the brave seagull. Without thinking, the 6-year-old girl rushed forward and wrapped her arms tightly around Clara's waist. The contractor completely lost his temper. He stepped forward and violently smacked Clara across the shoulder, sending both her and the little girl tumbling backward. They fell hard off the steep sandy drop-off, crashing right into the freezing, churning surf. The icy water instantly swallowed them. Clara didn't even think about her injured leg or the freezing pain shooting through her spine. She twisted her body mid-fall, taking the brunt of the impact against the hidden rocks. She wrapped her arms around Lily, lifting the child high above the freezing waves, acting as a human shield against the crushing surf. Even while shivering uncontrollably, Clara whispered to the terrified little girl that she was safe, that the brave seagull would protect them. In the midst of such cold, heartless cruelty, Clara's fierce protection shined like an absolute miracle. Let's write down our prayer together right now. Type. I vow to keep my integrity so God will lift me through every storm of life. Your words give strength to every kind heart that is being unfairly broken. Up on the seawall, the quiet man in the faded flannel shirt finally moved. Arthur didn't scream or run wildly. His steps were terrifyingly calm, but the look in his eyes made the surrounding crowd instinctively step back to let him pass. He walked straight into the freezing water without hesitation. He gently lifted Lily into his arms, and then extended a strong, steady hand to pull Clara out of the surf. He took off his heavy winter coat and wrapped it securely around Clara's shivering shoulders. The contractor stood on the dry sand, laughing maliciously. He pulled out his radio, calling for the resort security to arrest the homeless man and the crippled girl for trespassing. Arthur completely ignored him. He reached into his damp pocket and pulled out a heavy, matte black satellite phone. He pressed exactly one button. His voice was dangerously quiet, but it carried over the sound of the ocean. Freeze the entire Sand Bay development project immediately. Initiate a hostile takeover of the remaining shares, and fire the man standing in front of me. The contractor sneered, telling Arthur he was a pathetic lunatic playing make-believe on a burner phone. He told his guards to grab them, but the guards never got the chance to move. The deep, rhythmic thumping of heavy rotor blades suddenly shook the air. A sleek, black corporate helicopter crested over the cliffs and hovered directly above the beach, blowing sand violently into the contractor's face. At the exact same time, a fleet of 5 armored black SUVs tore through the beach parking lot, stopping right at the edge of the boardwalk. A dozen men in sharp suits poured out, led by a silver-haired executive. The executive didn't walk toward the contractor. He jogged straight through the wet sand, stopping directly in front of Arthur, and bowed deeply. He held out a thick leather folder. The executive announced clearly that the acquisition was complete, sir, and the site was now under his absolute command. The arrogant contractor's face drained of all color. His jaw dropped, as the reality of what he had just done hit him like a freight train. He had just assaulted the daughter of the most powerful maritime billionaire in the hemisphere. His legs physically gave out, and he collapsed onto the wet, freezing sand, stammering out pathetic apologies. Arthur didn't even look at him. He coldly ordered the executive to have the man investigated for corporate abuse, environmental destruction, and child endangerment. He made sure the man would never work in this industry, or any industry, ever again. Then, Arthur turned his attention back to Clara, who was staring at him in complete shock. He announced right then and there that the concrete resort project was permanently canceled. Instead, he was funding a multi-million-dollar coastal nature reserve, and he was naming it the Clara Foundation. Then, the ruthless billionaire did something no one in the corporate world had ever seen him do. Right there, in the freezing wind, standing in wet boots, Arthur dropped down to one knee. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a velvet box holding a stunning, flawless black pearl ring. He looked up at the woman who had saved his daughter's soul, and he asked her if she would let him spend the rest of his life protecting her shore. When that beautiful ring was placed on Clara's finger, justice had fulfilled its absolute greatest purpose. Let's celebrate this incredible moment together. Please comment. I vow to keep my integrity so God will lift me through every storm of life. Your blessing makes this beautiful ending even more powerful. Today, if you visit that bay, you won't see any loud, arrogant tourists or ugly concrete hotels. Instead, you'll see a beautifully restored lighthouse, shining its warm beam over a protected beach. You'll see a little girl named Lily, laughing and running along the shoreline, completely healed from her dark past. And you'll see Arthur and Clara, walking hand in hand, watching the wooden seagulls spinning in the ocean breeze. The warmth we give to others in the freezing storms of life will always be rewarded with the safest harbor imaginable. Never let the cruelty of others extinguish your kindness. Leave our prayer one last time below. Type, I vow to keep my integrity so God will lift me through every storm of life. And please, hit that subscribe button right now so we can continue to meet in the next beautiful miracle life has to offer. Thank you for watching, and I will see you next time.